Thank you, everyone, for your patience. My name again is Mickey Mullen. I am talking in front of the rooms to tell you the people who are talking about important things, which I am not. Well, I'm talking about important people, which is important. Other than that, though, we had, as I mentioned, a switch-up due to travel snafus. Joining us in a few moments is Marc Randazza, managing partner of Randazza the Randazza Legal Group, a nationally known First Amendment and intellectual property attorney. The practice includes representation of defendants in SLAPP actions, protesters, and other free speech cases, as well as intellectual property litigation. Randazza is an officer of the First Amendment Lawyers Association and is licensed to practice law in Nevada, California, Massachusetts, Arizona, Florida, all federal courts in those states, multiple federal appellate courts, and before the United States Supreme Court. I would like everyone to please put your hands together and welcome Frank Randazza.
Thank you. So usually I run into a place and have to give a presentation without remembering I had to do it. Fortunately, this was last minute, so I have a good excuse if I'm disorganized. It's not just my personality. But yes, as my friend here told you, I am a First Amendment lawyer, which when I became one, nobody really even knew what that meant. You know, when I was in law school, they did teach us that you couldn't really have a practice doing First Amendment law. Fortunately, I was anchorman in my class, meaning dead last. So I obviously missed that day of class and didn't pay attention. So now 20 years later, I'm realizing maybe it was good I didn't pay attention at all. So let's hear it for anybody else here dead last in their class and anything? Come on, nobody was watching Super Troopers instead of studying? Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. You know, I just got hired to be an expert witness in a fee dispute case. So I had to evaluate whether the attorney's fees were proper for one side or the other. And the side that didn't hire me, part of their justification for their high fees were that the partners had been number one in their class 25 years ago. Yeah. You know, Revenge of the Nerds, it's sort of the opposite of that. Revenge of the slack ass. So I cut their rates by 10% because of that, saying if you're still talking about what you got in contracts class 25 years ago, you must not have done jack shit since then. So I didn't make any friends with that, but maybe in here I did. So anyway, I'm here to talk a little bit about the state of the First Amendment. I came up here to try to promote something called an anti-SLAPP law. Does anybody know what that is? Yeah, you know what it is. That's right. You're an expert on it. I taught him about it about 20 minutes ago. So, well, he knew already, but it wasn't a hard lesson. He obviously wasn't anchorman in his class. But, you know, New Hampshire is a place that really is a beacon for constitutional rights. The New Hampshire Constitution itself is arguably the strongest constitution in the country when it comes to freedom of expression. It has some competition with Oregon, but, you know, can we all roll our eyes collectively at Oregon for a second, please? Anybody want to groan? Come on, groan. Oregon. Right, fuck Oregon. But Oregon actually was in the lead a little bit because most of this is, well, let me back up. Who's seen The People versus Larry Flynn? Yeah, I watched that movie, said that's what I want to be when I grow up. So that kind of skips through some of the intro. So in Oregon, a number of years ago, there was a case involving a strip club, which I happen to represent, or as we call them, First Amendment protected adult entertainment cabarets, or you can use strip club. And they had a proximity limitation because, you know, a lot of places don't want, quote unquote, that kind of thing. But you can't just say you can't have strip clubs here. What you can do is make it difficult for them to make any money. So if you say you need to stay 12 feet away from the stripper, well, how are you supposed to, you know, I mean, I've read about this, but, you know, how are you supposed to put a dollar bill into the garter belt or, you know, even see her Venmo tag on her thigh nowadays? So City of Nissa You told me I could be myself. The city of Nyssa in Oregon tried to put in a proximity rule, and I fought these proximity rules all across the country. Let me tell you, you ever meet a lawyer who says, I never lost a case? Well, yeah. That lawyer has no balls, and I mean that feminine or masculine, all right? They're worthless. I love taking on St. Jude cases, hopeless causes. So I fought proximity rules all over the place, saying, hey, how are you supposed to have the expressive conduct in, say, a hula dance or a Mardi Gras dance if you can't, like, put a hula lei around somebody's, somebody's neck? And I have had judges look at me and say, Mr. Randuzzi, which is what they call me south of the Mason-Dixon line, no matter what, even though it's Randazza. Don't mess that up, please. But they would say, might be a lei here, but ain't that kind of lei we're talking about. So I lost every one of those. But in the city of Nyssa, I did not win, but a friend of mine did. And I just love the fact that he's like the gayest person I've ever known, fighting for the right for women to give lap dances in Nyssa, Oregon. But he did win on that under the Oregon Constitution. Now, that's another adult entertainment case that is really foundational here. It comes out of New Hampshire. Now, the story starts in California. So there was a prosecutor who thought it would be fun to get rid of porn production, because there's always somebody who wants to do that. See, there was a time, some of you were old enough to remember this, when conservatives were anti-free speech and liberals were on the other side. Remember those halcyon days? I loved that. That was so fun. But, now I'm still standing on this little rock of free speech, and the wind changed, and everybody's like, well, why are you a fascist? Because, you got to be a fascist, white supremacist, sexist to be into free speech now. Yeah, pretty much. If you ask CNN, which fired me for not being sufficiently anti-free speech. But that's another story. So in State versus Freeman, this prosecutor decided we can get rid of porn if we charge it as prostitution. Because let's face it, two people are fucking getting paid. Is that prostitution? Yes. No, it isn't. Two reasons. The prostitution statute says you have to be paying for sexual gratification. In layman's terms, got to be getting your jollies. Director's not getting any jollies. Director's making a movie. Producer's making a movie. Now, they also said independently, even if it did fit, you would have a problem under the First Amendment, because how can you create pornography? I mean, you can't just have volunteer-only pornography. I mean, my God, can you imagine? Like, who's going to show up? It would be pretty ugly, I guess. Or maybe not, I don't know. You find people with issues everywhere. But you can't require one genre of production to be volunteer-only. So that passed. And then there was this myth that you could only shoot porn in California. Fast forward to 2008 in State versus Therault. Does anybody know this case? Worst law school class ever. All right, so in State versus Therault, there was a guy hanging around in the courthouse in Concord. I might have the town wrong, but I think it was Concord. And he hears this couple that's talking about having trouble paying their fines. And he says, well, I might be able to help you. Meet me out in the parking lot. So they come out and meet him in the parking lot, and he says, what do you say you come over to this hotel? I set up a camera. I shoot the two of you screwing. I give you a couple of bucks. Everybody wins. He gets charged with pandering for prostitution. Same thing as the Freeman case. Now, what I really loved, and this is one of the things that's great about New Hampshire jurisprudence, is that the New Hampshire Supreme Court held the same thing that the California Supreme Court did, but didn't say one word about the First Amendment, didn't say one word about federal law, entirely relied on the New Hampshire Constitution so that the prosecutor would not have any option to appeal it to the U.S. Supreme Court, which, while, sometimes it makes good decisions, sometimes it makes bad, if you show up there with a porn case, it usually doesn't work out well. So they insulated their decision. So now, New Hampshire, there's still this myth that you can only shoot porn in two states, but New Hampshire and California. There hasn't really been a rush to porn production in New Hampshire. I don't know why. You're all so sexy. Maybe they should have done something, but maybe it's just not enough waxing clinics here or something like that. I mean, tans would be better, but you're all set, but, but it's simply not happening. But what was great about that case is it did showcase that the New Hampshire Constitution is more protective than California's, more protective, I think, than Oregon's, and it is really the most free speech protective constitution in the country. However, that doesn't mean a whole lot unless you can afford me or my New Hampshire counterpart. So, if there is I asked before if you knew what a slap suit was. That is when somebody realizes that a really good way to shut you up. And anybody in here ever bumped into a situation where people wanted to shut you up? Just one? Jesus, come on. They didn't tell me this is the bullshit room. All put your fucking hands up. There's no way you're at this conference and nobody's ever tried to shut you up for your views. This is a participatory discussion. So you're either going to play or get the fuck out. Who here has had somebody try to shut them up for their views? All right. That's better. God. I'm not getting paid for this. All I'm getting out of this is your feedback. That's all I'm thriving on. So let's say we take I was talking to the Liberty Caucus. They said, what happens to you? What happens if you decide to come out with a ranking of a legislator and then they sue you because they don't like that ranking? They say, hey, I'm not an F when it comes to liberty issues. I'm an A. I believe in, shutting people up only if they're hurting other people's feelings, which seems to be the prevailing view of what the First Amendment says. Well, what happens to you then is you walk in and you sit down with me. And I tell you, I can win this. No problem. And they say, great. And they go to leave. And I say, hold on, where's your check? Well, how much do you need? Well, I'm $900 an hour. So I'll take $50,000 to start, and we'll see what happens when you run out of that. That's what your free speech costs. Who wants to buy some free speech? Who wants to hire me? Come on, I can win. Right, because when you're done, the very first one of these cases I ever did was a guy who lived in a homeowners association in Florida. Which right there, you should be like, yeah, this isn't going to end well. Put up a website that says he hated the plants they put in. It was really over nothing. I mean, this was just so petty. But he put up a website saying, we pay all these dues to the homeowners association. They put in these crappy plants that are all dead. What a bunch of assholes. So he finds himself in court. And he comes to me. I was significantly cheaper back then. I was a second-year associate. But it still cost him about $70,000 to get to the end of it. Now, here I am, a second-year associate at a little two-person firm, and they bring in mega firm of, douchebags and number one in their class and asshole here, right? And they're thinking, with their 700 lawyers, how can I possibly win? Well, litigation's kind of like Thermopylae. You can only get so many people through the pass at the same time, so we did prevail. And I was so proud of myself because I'm this kid who kicked the ass of this managing partner at this big firm, and I call my client and I say, we won, man. And he's like, that's great. So now I have a piece of paper that says I'm right. And all it cost me was my entire 401k that I had to clear out for it. And they don't prepare you for that in law school. Or at least I don't think they do. I might have missed that day too. But no, they don't. They don't prepare you for that in law school because, well, generally in law school, it is considered an impediment to being a professor if you've actually got experience practicing law. Which, go figure that. Can you imagine going to learn how to be an auto mechanic? The guy says, well, I've written articles about the racism of spark plugs, but I've never actually changed one. That's law school. That's what we pay for. And I thought at that moment, I can't do that again. I can't find myself in that situation again. So I started lobbying for these kinds of laws. Now, bounced around, wound up in California in-house counsel for a porn company and then moved the California porn industry to Nevada. Had to stick around, and we got one of these passed in Nevada. California has one. Oregon has one. What did we say before? Come on, fuck Oregon. Jesus, you guys playing or what? Oregon has one. Thank you. So Washington State has one. Texas has one. New Hampshire, the Institute for Free Speech is a, you know what that is. You can tell by what I told you about it. All right. If I need to explain any of those words, come to me after. Institute for Free Speech just ranked all of the states as far as their anti-SLAPP protection. And, like we talked about in the Thoreau case, New Hampshire Constitution, strongest in the country for free speech. So where do you think you guys wind up for anti-SLAPP protection? Dead fucking last. You know that shithole to the south? They're better than you. Massachusetts is better than you on a liberty issue. Now you're gonna pass my fucking law? So, what happens in an anti-SLAPP case, had I been doing that case that I did when I was a second-year associate under an anti-SLAPP regime, is you can stop this. Right? And this isn't just for example, defamation suits, although that's the most common time these are used. But if you file a lawsuit like this, and you understand full well, I mean, I've had people come to me and say, I want you to file a defamation suit against somebody. And I say, you don't have a case here. And they say, I don't care. They can't afford to defend themselves. I mean, I am a prostitute and I take some cases that I don't really believe in, but I've never done one of those. My engagement letter actually says, I will not do harm to, nor through inaction allow harm to come to the First Amendment. So thank you, Isaac Asimov. But, you know, other than that, I know no other firm that does that. So if somebody comes in and wants to shut one of you down, or shut somebody you don't like down, either way, you know, you should think about them too. All they need to do is file this thing, and then you are just going to kiss $35,000 to $175,000 goodbye. I don't care. Even if you get a cheap lawyer, you're going to be done. You know, no way you're getting through it with less than $50,000. So an anti-SLAPP law will allow you to immediately file an anti-SLAPP motion. That stops that case dead in its tracks. Then the judge has to immediately evaluate whether it is a well-founded case. I mean, that's a whole complicated discussion. I don't really want to get into it unless you guys really want me to, or maybe during the Q&A, but they have to evaluate, are you dealing with a matter of public concern? And a matter of public concern can be either the presidential election, or it can be the flowers at your homeowners association. Or frankly, you know, how many people have ever left a negative Yelp review? Really? Not one of you? This is participatory. Don't make me ask twice before you put your hands up again. All right? How many of you have left a negative review of anything? Yeah. Okay. There you go. Doesn't have to be Yelp. Fine. Any of you ever been sued or threatened to be sued over it? Jeremy? No, I've been sued, but not for that. You've been threatened to be sued over it? Yeah. So what happened to you?
Oh, I can't talk about it.
Confidentiality agreement? Okay. So, what's your name? Just your first name. John. Okay. So, John is now in the prison of a state that doesn't have an anti-SLAPP law. I can tell that by what he said and why. Now, is that right? And how many Johns are there across New Hampshire? I don't know. But because they can't talk about it. Right? That's what happens too. Usually what happens is you get the demand letter, you get the complaint, and you realize, I am not giving Randazza $90,000 to get me out of this trouble. I'll just shut the hell up and let the guy continue to put, you know, I don't know, was it a Brazilian butt implant or something that went poorly or something like that? So now look at his ass when he stands up. You'll see what he was complaining about. And then, right, it's just not right. It's not right, is it? You're with him? Yeah, it's not right, is it? No. All right. So you go to the Brazilian Butt Implant Institute of Dixville Notch, and it didn't go well. And then next thing you know, you're getting threatened with litigation to shut up. Well, I can stop that. The judge has to evaluate it. Now, there's a flaw in the system there. It's called the judge. Now, there are some wonderful judges. They're most wonderful judges. But by most, I mean, 51 to more percent, but not 100%. Judges like to play favorites. Judges are flawed because they're human. Some judges are just scumbags. Not very many. In fact, less than you'd probably think. But then you also have judges who just don't want to make a decision, even though that's their job. I literally had a judge once tell me during a discussion, the judge literally said these words, "Who am I to judge?" I was like, "Your Honor, I'm putting this transcript on my wall because that's literally what your job is called." But she didn't think that was funny. Judges don't usually like the way when you try to be funny, but if you can make them laugh, you always win. It's funny about that. But the judge scowled at me about that one. But if the judge doesn't want to make a decision, it's very easy not to. See, a judge doesn't have to find that it was a touchdown when it wasn't a touchdown. They just got to change the spot of the location of the spot a few times. Or the judge can say, "I'm just going to let this go to discovery and let this case play out." You know what discovery means? Yeah. Go into the bathroom, put a microphone next to the toilet and flush it, and then compare that emotion to your bank account. That's where it gets really expensive. Right? Discovery is depositions. Go through every document you have. Let me see all your emails. Fighting about what's privileged. Fighting about what we can't. My God, the petty shit that goes on in discovery disputes, that's 80% of what you spend on litigation. Chief Justice John Roberts actually produced a report in 2015 talking about how they really needed to rein that in federal courts. He doesn't have any jurisdiction over state courts, but that needs to be really reined in because it causes regular people to not have access to justice. You do not want a court system that is there only for the very rich and the crazy, because that's generally what you wind up having. Look, if you got some crazy homeless person, what the hell do they care if things don't go well for them? But those of you got to get up and work and, watch that 401k grow a little bit every month. You guys, this system isn't for you if you want to have free speech without an anti-SLAPP law. So here's the great thing. When the judge denies it, you get an immediate appeal. Now, these appeals are usually so successful that in Texas, the Texas appellate courts, the judges formed a lobbying organization asking the Texas legislature to repeal its anti-SLAPP law, the appellate judges, because anti-SLAPP denials at the trial level in Texas were overturned 80% of the time. Now think about that. Your job as an appellate judge is to reverse errors by the lower court. 80% of these cases that were denied were in error, and the appellate court judges said, "Who are we to judge? We don't want to judge anymore. We just want to kind of sit here and, get speaking engagements that we're not prepared for, I guess. I don't know." So it's been extremely effective in Texas. It's been really effective in Nevada. It's been not effective at all here because your law sucks. Oregon's is better. Massachusetts's is better. Thank you. So you got my point. You should be ashamed of yourselves as people who live in New Hampshire to have the worst anti-SLAPP law in the country. Now, why do I give a shit? I don't live here because I live everywhere. I am a First Amendment lawyer. I practice everywhere. I go everywhere trying to defend this. I mean, I've gone to, the outskirts of a small town in Montana to fight these fights. All right? I'm trying to be the Johnny Appleseed of these cases. And one funny thing is if every state had one, I would probably lose 60% of my practice. But, that's what an activist is. It's somebody who's trying to work himself out of business. Don't worry about it, okay? I got a lot of money. I got very nice things. I don't really need that practice. And I also do copyright cases, so I can just do that shit, Porn copyright cases are always funny. So there's ways to have a good time. And believe me, the censorship business is never going out of business. The government will always try to pull something. One of my funnest cases actually ever, this has nothing to do with what I've been talking about, but fuck it, I want to tell the story, and I have the microphone. So, was actually in Concord. I'm sure a number of you know who Vermin Supreme is. Yeah, he's my client, of course. So Vermin wanted to protest outside of a bookstore where Hillary Clinton was giving a book signing. Who knows the story already? All right, so they said that he applied for a permit, and the city of Concord said no on two grounds. Ground number one it would be very disrespectful to Mrs. Clinton. No shit, right? That just makes me want to burn shit down like it's Oregon. Oregon! Every time I say Oregon or Massachusetts, I want to hear fuck and that state. God, learn the rules. So Vermin, then the second ground was the Secret Service actually said that they could not guarantee Madam Clinton's safety with an animal there. So I filed a lawsuit against the city of Concord. Yeah, you can imagine what I did with this, right? I mean, this is, I said, you know, all our enemies have to do is mass at the border riding miniature ponies, and the most powerful military ever to exist would be powerless to do anything? We're screwed. Yeah, we filed the lawsuit actually after hours on one weekday, and by 10:30 the next morning we had settled because Vermin actually in passing said, you know, if they just give me a free speech paddock, I'll be happy. And I was like, all right, I'll see what I can do. You know, I'm thinking we're going to get damages, attorney's fees, all that. And the first thing the city attorney says to me is, what if we gave you a free speech paddock? I was like, man, I have never had the opening offer be precisely what my client wanted. So we were settled by lunch that day. So anyway, that's just my fun New Hampshire litigation story. But anyhow, I did ask for a signal at 25 minutes because you have me for 40. And if anybody has any questions, you know, I'm here at your disposal. If you don't, I'm just going to tell more dirty stories. So, you know. Sure.
Does it work? Yes, it does. Tim Pool has recently complained that people are swatting him.
Yes.
When you said slap earlier, my brain went swat. So that's been on my mind since. Could that be considered a First Amendment issue where someone is taking retaliation against someone just because they don't like their speech?
It could. The problem is what you usually need to do if there's a government actor, like if the government gets involved, you file what's called a Section 1983 claim. That's what we sued Concord for. And in those cases, even when you're the plaintiff, you can get attorney's fees. As far as a cause of action against the person making the call, probably not. You probably wouldn't have a civil action unless one is enumerated specifically in your state laws, because in most states, even a false police report is privileged. Now, you can be prosecuted for it, but it's privileged against civil actions because, you know, what we don't want to do is have somebody call and say, hey, you know, this guy just stabbed me, and the stabber then sues them for that and ties them up for some time. Now, if they did that, you would have an anti-slap against them. But yeah, so this wouldn't directly affect that, but it would tangentially affect it.
I sat back down because I do want to hear more dirty stories, but I think the question is, as a professional, do you have the right to say whatever you want while you're working? Like, so for example, if you're a football player and, you know, you kneel, is that a First Amendment issue? Or if you're a teacher who wants to teach children that they're oppressed or oppressive based on the color of their skin, and there's...
that doesn't happen.
Yeah. And in New Hampshire, that's illegal. Like, is that a teacher's First Amendment right to do so?
All right, those two very different situations. So the NFL player who wants to kneel during the national anthem, that's up to their employer. Like if I come into the office tomorrow and during our, you know, we have a morning Zoom meeting for everybody. If one of my employees wants to kneel and reverence for something, I would probably just say that's a little weird, but, you know, go ahead and do it because we have very strong free speech protections at my firm. But in regular life here, no, there's no First Amendment issue there. If the NFL wants to say, if you do that, you're kicked out of the NFL, there's no First Amendment issue. There may be something in the player contract, you know, and then you have to go into NFL arbitration for that, but no First Amendment issue there at all. Now, it'd be different if, say, I want to say Texas either passed or is talking about passing a law making that illegal, yeah, the moment that happens, it should be struck down with furious anger by the courts. Because, I mean, personally, I think that kind of protest is great. I mean, Colin Kaepernick was originally just sitting on a bench during the anthem, which seemed disrespectful. He met with a disabled veteran who convinced him that said, hey, what we do when we're talking about a fallen comrade is we take a knee. That's how we show reverence. And then he did it, and then people still weren't happy. It's like, what do you want him to do? I mean, I don't think he's a very good football player, but I admire what he did, and I think it's a good thing what he did. And I like that the NFL has tolerated it, because I would like the NFL to, big organizations like that should show us some leadership. Now, in the teacher example, that's much more complicated. Teachers in public schools are governed by the First Amendment. And, I've had multiple cases where students have called me that they've had their First Amendment rights infringed on at schools. I love doing those. Especially, I do a lot of them back in Gloucester, Mass, because that's just where I grew up. And any First Amendment violation there, I'm like, no. I'm not having the place where I grew up not be a place where the First Amendment's respected. One fun case I had, there was a teacher actually got fired for posting something about she's super liberal, super left-wing, hates guns. She would freak the hell out if she walked through this place. But after a school shooting, she put up a thing on Facebook saying, since nobody really seems to care about this, can somebody help me come and secure this door in case there's a shooting sometime? She got fired for that. So we filed a lawsuit against the city on that basis, saying that was a violation of her First Amendment rights. And anybody ever been to Gloucester? Yeah. So, I'm from there. I grew up there, and then the lawyer for the city was like, oh, I'm from here too. No, you're not. All right. You can tell in one sentence that you're not fucking from here. That was just in my head, right? I said, oh, yeah, really? Where'd you live? She says, oh, right across from Good Harbor Beach. I'm like, yeah, sure you did. And then I was like, you're from Brookline and you had a summer house in Gloucester, didn't you? No, Arlington. I'm like, yeah. So shut up. Don't tell me you're fucking from here. So now let's talk about settlement. And then, they had a number that was pretty reasonable, and I wanted more than that. And she said, but you're going to fight like $200,000 worth of fees to get to that, and you're probably only getting a third of this. Why would you do that? I said, listen, see my fucking last name? Randazza? That's Sicilian. Do you see the last name of the teacher? Linquata? You see a connection there? That's my cousin's baby daughter. So I'm not doing this for contingency. I'm not getting shit out of this, except for my cousin Michael putting his hand on my shoulder and go, Marky, you did a good job for my little girl. And if I don't get that, I'm going to drag you to fucking hell and back. We got the money. So, yeah.
So you said,
Robert's Rules. Oh, wow. Dude, you're pulling that on me?
No, so the question was, if a teacher says something in the classroom, the example you gave was she said it on Facebook.
Yeah.
So is there a difference?
There is. There can be a difference. If a teacher's expressing her opinion in school, if there is a legitimate pedagogical reason for it, that can be the subject of discipline. You can't, look, I can go out there and, start jumping up and down, dressed like Vermin Supreme, screaming, we're the real people and we sniff glue. All right? But if a teacher does that, we probably fire her or him. I don't know why my head went to a woman doing that. It's very sexist of me. This organization have a diversity, inclusion, and equity committee to refer me to? I need my hat. I need a struggle session. But
that's perfect, because that's just what I wanted to ask you about.
Okay, good.
It seems,
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Well, it seems like more and more sort of law associations or bars are kind of going woke. They're requiring this kind of thing.
Holy shit balls, are they?
We're seeing it in schools with what's happening with Ilya Shapiro as a recent example. So I was just wondering if you could just talk about this a little bit. Is this a real thing we should be concerned about? Are there things that could be done? What does this mean for liberty through the law profession? I
wouldn't really be worried about it unless you don't want monoculture in your legal profession. So, yeah, I'd be very worried about it. The American Bar Association, which is just ragingly left-wing. And by the way, I spent most of my life being called left-wing, so I'm not sort of, one of these guys. I'm one of those guys. So, but the ABA has instituted these, what you'd call woke policies, consistently. And the worst thing that they've done recently, well, they've done two bad things recently. One is they are requiring law schools, in order to graduate a student, that they take a victim studies class or whatever the hell you want to call it. So you have to take a woke, you have to pass this woke threshold. By the way, you don't have to take evidence, right? So you don't need to know anything about evidence to get a JD. I know that because I got a shitty grade in that too. Actually, I got a B in that, but I got a C in contracts. So I suck at those. I just sign them and figure I'll make an associate litigated if I don't like it later. Don't do that. But anyway, yeah. So but then also they have passed. They've tried to pass. They did pass a model rule that they're trying to get every state to adopt. Model Rule 8.4G. And you already can't discriminate in the practice of law, and I think that's a great thing. I mean, if somebody walks into my office and I say, no, man, I'm not, I don't represent Albanians, fuck off, I think I should get disciplined for that. On the other hand, they say that anything even remotely connected to the practice of law, if it is in any way discriminatory, that can get you disciplined. Now, most people think, well, I wouldn't do that anyway. But, maybe you want to advocate for which is the amendment that let women vote? We didn't have nuclear weapons before women voted, right? So let's repeal their right to vote. Maybe we won't die in a nuclear holocaust. Look, it's a stupid position, but I should get the right to say it. But if I actually advocated for that, I could lose my law license. Or bring it to a less absurd example. Maybe if I want to say advocate for, I'm working on a case right now. I'm a very small part of it, but I'm working on that case where Harvard University is getting sued for, you don't have any personality, by the way, ma'am, just according to Harvard. The personality, it's absurd what Harvard's been doing. Like every Asian kid who comes in there with just rock your face off qualifications, every one of them just so happened to get a 0 on their personality score. Right? Where are all these Asians with personalities? They are not applying to Harvard, apparently. But if I were to advocate against that, if I were to advocate against affirmative action on that basis, a lot of people would say that's racist, white supremacist, whatever the hell it is. But, even though you're advocating one person's equality is another person's bigotry. So it leaves it so open that you would find yourself, essentially look at your teachers' unions. That's what the profession of law would wind up being. And I think most of you would probably have a very hard time finding a lawyer willing to take your causes because, you're just not on the right side of that movement. 5 minutes? All right, you're last.
So
like me.
Yeah, I don't run
in New Hampshire when it comes to anti-slap laws.
Well,
last.
It's interesting you said something about anti-slap with police records. So mine's a little different. So there's a town that I came from, which is why I'm here now, where they have bias crimes. So the police collect records of people accusing you of bias.
Just bias. Not like, I punch you and I say, you fucking Zoroastrian, that's what you get.
No, these are basically
saying,
school administrators reporting kids for being biased to the police.
Yeah, thought crime.
Thought crimes.
Sure.
And the police are keeping records.
That's in New Hampshire?
No, this is why I live in New Hampshire.
What state is this in?
Maryland.
Yeah, fuck Maryland.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But you were talking about you can't, the issue is there
like
any way to get rid of these fake records of bias?
Yes.
Because they take the kids' records. You're supposed to be against FERPA, but they don't do anything.
Look,
and there seems to be it's like this no man's land where they have these databases of dissident children.
Yes,
and
which they promise they won't
them.
use for anything right now, right? But you can bet one day that will come out when it's important.
Right, so how do you stop it? I mean, I've been fighting this for 2 years.
It seems ripe for a civil rights lawsuit. I mean, if a school
should
is...
talk.
Actually, yeah. We can talk. And that's the kind of thing where when you sue the government under Section 1983, you don't have to come up with a retainer deposit. So, yeah, I'll talk to you after this. But all right. I guess that's my time. I hope I haven't bored you. And take care of that butt implant. Really, I think you look beautiful, but I know it doesn't feel good. But all right. So if anybody wants to, bullshit about First Amendment things, you see me walking around. That's why I'm here. So you won't be bothering me. But don't come up to me and say, my ex-wife is suing me for child support. Is that a First Amendment thing? Like, if you see me go, oh, come on, just leave me alone. All right. But anyway, thank you very much for your attention. I hope that was as good as the guy.